One.
Welcome to How to Be a Humane Leader Without Losing Your Job. Dive deep into humane leadership crafted for today's fast-paced business world. Listen to all our podcasts on the major streaming platforms and join us as we explore the essence of humane leadership in today's dynamic business landscape. I'm Chris Olerking, a Fortune 100 IT leader, alongside Roberto Torres, a seasoned startup engineering leader. Today, we will discuss how to help decide on the amount of career risk and employment risk for various different stages of life. Hey, Roberto, I hope you're not facing too much risk at your stage of life.
No, I ain't. Having 54 years old is something that I had to take away a risk to be on the safe side.
Yeah, and certainly at different stages, you have to approach it differently. I think, when I think about the core of this discussion, in my career, I had various different levels of career risk. And I really enjoyed what we in the States would call the operations job or the firefighter mode, right? Where everything depended on you. Our department was pretty small. If there was a crisis, I was the firefighter who could come in and save it, and come in and fix things. And that's very exciting. However, in many companies, often when things are getting outsourced or people are getting laid off, that's one of the first jobs that sometimes is at risk of getting laid off. And while I was in my early 20s, I didn't have a wife or kids or anything like that. You could take a lot of risk at, let's say, at 48 and you've got two kids in college and, and so on and so forth. Maybe you're even supporting your elderly parents. The amount of risk that you should take in your career would probably be a lot less. And you might want to work for a very stable company, like an electric utility that never lays anybody off. So there's definitely different times where, in your life stages, you can accept a different amount of career risk. I understand that perhaps you have a friend who's pondering what to do in his career.
Oh yeah, indeed. And he likes or he brings joy to his life as soon as he is in all these companies and I mentioned startups that bring adrenaline to the highest level. So he could be the hero, wear the cape and come into all these fires, fire scenarios and everything, and bring the solution and say, "Hey, I did it. This startup, this company is running thanks to me." He likes those kind of stuff, but he has a wife, he has a son, and I coach him to, is it really this what you want? To have the highest adrenaline versus the safety for your family. So it is a pretty difficult topic to discuss with someone, not to, because you have to coach someone to go to the best way to be in your life.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've done with both friends, family, and official, direct reports or asking for career advice is I try to steer away from saying, well, if I were you, I would do this. That I generally try not to do that. I do it occasionally, but try not to do that. But instead ask, have you considered this point or that point or this other point, right? And so some of the points that I would bring up to your friend who likes the adrenaline rush, and I get that, I had that in my early career, is if the adrenaline rush is that critical, could it be that you could do it in a firm that has better benefits, has a more stable workforce, but be in a role that still has some of those adrenaline aspects to it? So, obviously the gamble that you're taking with a startup, there could be a big payoff, but there could be a big penalty, right? Suddenly unemployment and no severance package, and it's just the job ends. So are there jobs that are still adrenaline jobs? And for me, you know, I would think about some of the operational roles or some of the product development roles that are in large operations. You know, we focus on IT, but let's think about things that a really steady job is like an electric utility company. Working for an electric utility company, you're probably not going to lose your job. However, when the hurricane comes, when the big storm comes, you know, it's all hands on deck. Everybody needs to pull together. We need to get through this storm and then keep our public informed. Let's say, you know, let's suppose it's the big hurricane like down in Texas where there's power outages. Okay, what are you doing to help solve and manage that crisis? There could still be an adrenaline rush in those kinds of jobs, but still have the benefits that a family needs. At that stage of life where you have a family and they're depending on you, you know, you'd want those kinds of benefits that a large company like that has, you know, health benefits, retirement benefits. If they were to have a layoff, there's probably a generous severance package so that you'd have plenty of paid time to find your next job. You know, those are much more critical to a family man of, you know, I'm just make this up, you know, 40 years old, 2 kids, like I mentioned. You know, you need those benefits more than when you're 22 years old and you're living in an apartment with 4 other people. And, you know, if you had to, you could eat nothing but chicken soup for a month. It's just, you know, coach them on, have you considered this? What if you lose your job and there's no severance package? And because of the nature of the job, maybe there's not even unemployment, depending on the country you're in. Do you have enough money saved up? Maybe you have this gigantic bank account that you saved a ton of money and you could go without having a job for 4 years. All right, go to the startup, take the gamble. That's worth it. But, you know, ask these probing questions about, have they really thought about the different risks, and have they thought about the contingencies that they need to cover if they take the startup engineering operations job versus they take the electric utility operations job. Depending on where you are in your career, those 2 jobs may pay the same, but the risks are hugely different.
Oh, yeah. One thing is, I think your example is marvelous. The thing is, most of us cannot choose in what company to we go. For instance, I have an intern, and I was talking to him, and he told me that the first interview he got in his life was with me. And obviously, the first company he worked was in the company that I am in right now. And he told me that before he sent emails to Systrom, Microsoft, the big companies, and none of them replied to them. So very few people to choose where to work, maybe as this electrical company. So with that in mind, maybe you got into an industry which is so stable, which there are no firing, there is no brains of, there's no pits of problems or everything. But maybe if you want to have an adrenaline rush, maybe it could be directed to a specific project. Maybe you could identify maybe a problem that is related to your department and tell your manager, hey, I'm seeing that we have a lack of processes or something that is missing. Maybe I could work in this project if it would be possible. And maybe the manager could see, hey, it could have many different answers, but maybe it should say, well, yes, it will be a nice idea, or maybe not. But if your manager sees that you have a service mind in which you're thinking about solving problems, maybe your manager could direct you to a project, not that satisfies you, but satisfies maybe the company.
Certainly there's going to be that balance. So one thing that I find, certainly with the younger folks that haven't worked as much, is they got to keep in mind that the primary benefit has to be to the company. In other words, your boss cares about you, and your boss would love for your career to grow. But ultimately, what you're doing needs to benefit the company. So as you're saying, maybe there's projects that are in the backlog that just can't get approached because they don't have resources, or maybe they don't think they have the right talent to get the project going. You offered that I will learn that and I'll take it on and I'll work it into my work schedule. And you take the risk that way to boost your adrenaline. But always keep in mind that these proposals to even the most humane leader, it needs to benefit the company. So, if you have a role in the company that is very low risk and it's not boosting your adrenaline, you're not excited about it, and you come up with an idea that really benefits you and your learning, but only has marginal benefit to the company, of course your humane leader is still not going to be excited about it. Why? Because it's not the benefit to the company. So realize you could have a very humane leader or a very terrible leader, but if the benefits are not there to the company, your idea won't go forward. So think about, you're trying to manage your career at various stages of your life. You're 20, you're 30, you're 40, you're 50, or maybe you're even 60, and you're near the end. There's different levels of risk and excitement that you can accept because of your situation. And that situation may be, again, wife, kids in college, kids with health problems that have high medical bills, any various different things. So the humane leader needs to try and help that friend or employee think about where you're at in that stage of your career. Where do you want it to go? Okay, I've heard that from the career discussion, but consider your stage of life and what's the benefit to the company. If your stage of life is you cannot accept much risk because of the responsibilities you have, then your proposal to the company for what you'd like to do has to be probably somewhat conservative. So it's got to have benefits that are more likely to be realized, meaning it's not a very risky project. Might be hard to do, but the odds of it succeeding have to be high because the company needs to see the benefit, and you can't take the career risk to have it be a complete failure and you get fired, right? Because wife, kids, you're supporting your parents and all these other things, versus maybe you're at closer to the end of your career. You're 59 and a half, you've saved diligently, your financial planner says you can retire any day you want. All right, then if you really want to take the risk and do something very risky with your career, go ahead, because you could always just retire, But I try and get those employees to think about those underlying issues that allow you to take the risk. Is your situation figured out enough? Personal situation, background situation. They don't have to share the details, but you just need to make sure that they're thinking about them. If you've thought about all those and you have contingency plans and you've got them covered, take as much risk as will make you happy, whether it's in the current company or, nope, I'm quitting this job and I'm going to go to the sketchiest, strangest startup that I'm not sure is ever going to make any money, but I'm going to try it. Okay, if you've got all my questions, you've thought through all my questions in terms of your risk profile and the things you need to provide for your family, if you've got all that covered, I fully support you, quitting where you're at. Even if you're one of my direct employees, go ahead, quit, go for it. You only live once. But I don't want you to only live once without thinking through these key things like your financial situation, your health care, what happens if it goes bad, how long can you survive if it goes bad? Because again, as we go through stages of life, there's different decisions that are much more important than just, I like to have adrenaline in my job.
Yeah, there is a word that belongs to millennials, millennials and centennials, which is FOMO, FOMO, fear of missing out. Okay, you're maybe in your end 20s and you want to have FOMO of going to a company and having all this adrenaline rush. Okay, it's good, but try also to be aware of the environment that are maybe in that industry, in that country, because today there are many companies, not only startups, there are well-known companies who are having many cuts of their whole department. There are many cuts within that company. I have a friend which works the Citibanamex. It is, I think, the third or fourth biggest bank. And he has been many years over there, and he knows that there is coming a big cut of people within that company. So he knows that he has to stick within that company, but he's really he has a lot of fear of what's going to happen because he's not young, he's older even though than me. But the thing about going with your impulses, many times it hurts your finances. What I suggest is either if you choose to propose a project to your leader, or you want to go to another company or whatever, you have to go deep dive research and find out what happens, what is going on with that company, with that industry. Is it stable? Is it not? If it's not stable, you could go to a higher risk of having your finances hurt. So instead of jumping to the first idea that you have, hold your horses, research, and take an informed decision. And after that, I would say it will be easier, but at least you have all the tools, and with your mind cold, you could have better decisions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you're saying all the right things. I completely agree. It's really needs to be a very thoughtful decision. And again, as the humane leader, I don't recommend you telling them what to do. Instead, you're asking them questions, like how long can you financially be unemployed? What will you do for healthcare if the job doesn't go well? What if, and so you ask them these questions to help them be prepared for the worst case scenario. Hopefully it goes great, right? We always hope that our coworkers and our friends are extremely successful and things go great. But you need to prepare for the not so great. Because just as you mentioned, some of the biggest companies, when they lay people off, it can be an entire department. And you may have just recently transferred into that department. You were a star in your previous department. They recruited you to come into the new department. You're a star there. You're their number one performer for the first 2 years in a row. But now the company's decided to cut costs, and they let 100% of the people in that department go, no matter what. Didn't matter that you're the top performer. You're getting laid off with everybody else. And those kinds of things can happen. And so even with my junior employees, while I don't try not to get into their personal business, you can give some basic financial advice. And our HR department, would always tell you, you be very careful about what you say about a personal financial advice, et cetera. You don't want to be held liable for it. But the bottom line is you got to coach these younger employees to get into the retirement plan, be saving money for the future, save money for a rainy day in case bad things happen. And so, you're coaching your friends, your coworkers to try and be prepared, because ultimately that financial independence allows you to take more risk. So the more financial independence you have, if you're that adrenaline junkie that wants to be the fireman and IT operations and run in and save the day and fix the database or whatever, you can do that at any stage of your career if you have more financial independence. So those are the kinds of questions, that can help them decide, look, you know what? I only have $1,000 in my checking account and I have nothing saved for retirement. Then, go into that brand new startup that is going to send you a kitty litter via the mail. That's not probably a good startup for you.
Oh, yeah. Let me tell you about a cousin of mine. 20 years ago, he thought that he was the hero of the company he was working because many problems, he raised his hand and he solved the problem. And he thought that he deserved more money. So what he did was to make a scheme and told his manager, hey, I'm quitting. I'm quitting in 2 weeks' time because he thought that his manager would say, no, don't leave. I will give you more money. Instead, his manager told him, really? Oh my God, that's very thoughtful of you. 14 days? Thank you. I'm going to, I don't know what he did. My cousin had no job for a while, even though he was young and he didn't have his many expenses as he has today. But don't let your ego go to the top, to the ceiling. Try to cool down and see what is going on. And us as human leaders have to do that with our reports. If we're seeing someone ego is really, really high, talk to them, talk to these people and lower that ego because that will hurt them and maybe the company as well.
Absolutely. I think in my experience, and again, I came from a gigantic company, but I had met many employees who thought this company will never survive without me. And I always thought that was such an interesting ego perspective to have with a company of 100 and at that time was 130,000 people. I'm like, look, they've traded out CEOs, they've traded out CFOs, they have swapped out various vice presidents and directors and core employees, sometimes thousands at a time. Company's still here. There are 6 billion people on the planet. Everybody is replaceable. So bring that ego down, like you're saying. Realize that in a small company, yeah, you may be indispensable, but you are dispensable. You can be replaced. In a smaller company, it may be harder than in a 130,000 person company, but it is possible. And so never think that you're irreplaceable. That is the only place you're irreplaceable to is your family. And in these career decisions, the older you get and the more responsibilities you have, that family needs to be your number one priority, that you're looking through that lens of your family for your career decisions. At 20, not that big of a deal. As your family grows and your responsibility grows, that lens of looking through the family responsibilities, financial, personal responsibility, time that you can spend with your family is so much more critical. So I always try and get people to think about those kinds of questions in those discussions.
Indeed. Wise words, man. Well, I think with this, we can end the podcast, and maybe if someone who needs to hear this will help what we spoke today.
I hope so. I certainly hope so. It's a long career. Everybody's got to work a long time. So think about your career choices carefully.